So Shabbat Shalom, we'll start with Shalom Aleichem. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem L'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Baruch Mile Shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Melech Malachei HaMelachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Tzichem LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. So Shabbat Shalom and welcome. As we get to the end of our week, we're able to reflect on all that we accomplished and I guess everything that we're bringing with us. In some ways for me, I guess it's actually what I'm leaving behind as I am moving in a few weeks, and I was starting to sell furniture, so my apartment is now a lot emptier than it was, but it was a great accomplishment to get there. And so, sometimes we increase our things and sometimes we decrease our things. And so whether we're bringing many things with us into Shabbat or leaving many things behind, we'll continue with Lechu Neranena. Lechu Neranena l'Adonai, Nariya leTzoishenu. Lechu Neranena l'Adonai, Nariya leTzoishenu. Lekama chana b'todah, Bizmerat Nariya lo. Lekama chana b'todah, Bizmerat Nariya lo. We'll continue with Or Zarua LaTzadik. Or Zarua LaTzadik, Uleishrev Simcha. Or Zarua LaTzadik, Uleishrev Simcha. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, Lehodu lezecher kodsho. Simchu tzadikim Adonai, Behodu lezecher kodsho. We'll continue as we rise for Psalm 29. Mizmor leDavid, Havil Adonai b'melim, Havil Adonai kavod, Havil Adonai kavod shamo, Yishachar Adonai k'hadat kodesh, Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod, Yiri Adonai hamayim, Kol Adonai ha'kolam, Kol Adonai lehadai, Kol Adonai sorry, my brother's visiting, and so I'm just giving him one of the sheets, which I guess actually is not going to be the most helpful as we're next doing Lechadodi. But for Lechadodi, we're doing the longer version, the one we used in the park. We just did the 4 verses, so you'll still have to catch up with us. So next we'll continue welcoming Shabbat with Lechadodi. Lechadodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela, shamor zafot bedivo echad kishmiyanu, el hameyuchad Adonai echad ushmo echad l'shemo tiferet elitila. Lechadodi likrat kala, pene Shabbat nekabela, לקראת שבת אנחנו ונחלקים את כל הברכה בראש מכרם נסוך סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לכדודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה, מקדש מלך כמלוכה קומיצאי מתוך ההפיכה במחשבת בעמק הבחר הוא יחמו עלייך אדמה. לכדודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה, תתנבק מהפקו מלבשי פיקרי תפארתכני על יד בן אישה תתהלכני אור ולא נפשי נפשי גאלה. לכדודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה, התעוררי התעוררי כי באורי קומי אורי 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 שתדברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לכדודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה, לא תבושי ולא תקמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תהמי, אך יחפשו עניי עמי ואיני מתה נראתי לה. איי 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 לכדודי, איי 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 לקראת קלה, איי 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 פני שבת, איי 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 נקבלה. והיו למשיסה שוסייך ורחקו כל בבלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך ימסוס חתן מתנה קלה. איי 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 לכדודי, איי 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 לקראת קלה, איי 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 פני שבת, איי 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 נקבלה. ימין ושמאלי פרוצי ואת אדוני תריצי, על יד איש בן פרצי ואני שמחה ונגילה. איי 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 לכדודי, איי 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 לקראת קלה, איי 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 פני שבת, איי 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 נקבלה. We rise and face our entrances. Glory ושלום אתה בלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם זה כולה, בורך לה, בורך לה. איי 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 לכדודי, איי 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 לקראת קלה, איי 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 פני שבת, איי 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 נקבלה. So now continue with Shalom Rav, our prayer for peace. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Yisrael Yisrael b'chol lev v'chol shah yishlomecha Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim le'olam. So Shabbat Shalom. As someone who grew up in the 90s, at least as a young child, as I was exposed to a lot of commercials and ads as part of a very, the war on drugs and a very strong anti-drug campaign. And looking back, these images really spark a sort of humorous nostalgia. Because, growing up, it made me think that, drugs always came from someone from a creepy van, or that, the only people who ever, used or were around drugs, were complete losers. That this was part of this campaign of saying, just say no. That sort of anything that even came close to drugs should have been so repulsive that you would always be a few steps away. But of course, this is a campaign that ended up not working. And I think as we see with the opioid crisis, especially as it really came through a lot of prescription painkillers, that reality was not so simple. And of course, seeing the way that plenty of people, used some drugs recreationally, and were still successful, really made it feel a little disingenuous. And so, taking this in mind, we can see a similar dynamic in our Torah reading this week. That our reading this week, Parshat Re'eh, includes this very strict passage about staying away from idolatry. That it describes that once the Israelites are able to settle in their land, that Moses is warning them not to even study, essentially, the history of the idolatrous religions that were there before. Similarly, it describes that if there's a prophet, even if this prophet is able to predict things that come true, but they're, calling for the Israelites, to worship a foreign god, that you really have to push them away. And of course, the Torah, in having capital punishment, says you should put that person to death. And even when you have family members who are enticing you away from, what was the correct religion, that it called for a similar punishment. And so it really feels like if we were to really shoot the Torah as a video, that it really would match the tone of those anti-drug campaigns from the early 90s. And so even as I think it's hard to sort of internalize this passage because it is so extreme, I think within it we are able to see perhaps a few truths that are still relevant to us. The first one is the reality, that bad things are enticing, that of course having the desire of an anti-drug campaign, is the fact that it's going to be enjoyable, but when you lose control, it really is able to then ruin your life and create these ripples of harm that then affect your family, your friends, your community, and in many ways all of society. Similarly, there's been some recent studies about with ultra processed foods that activate some of the same mechanisms of addiction that really explained that sometimes when I eat an entire box of Oreos within a day, that it is in some ways just that natural process of the way that perhaps not buying Oreos would have been the better choice. Where that does become a little more difficult is when it comes to ideas. That of course, on the one hand, Judaism has developed into a religion that is intellectually open, especially within conservative Judaism. We are curious about our own past history, and we're curious to then look at the ideas from many different places. But of course, when an idea is able to sort of take root, it sometimes can lead you to very dark places. And so the intent within this passage is to create boundaries. But I think when we're able to consider different types of boundaries, we're able to perhaps see, pros and cons in each. That this one, in creating such a strict perspective, is trying to create a very hard boundary. But often, when you have that very strict boundary, it's able to be brittle. For example, we even have this, in our tradition with the story of Adam and Eve and the tree of knowledge, where Adam tells Eve, if you touch the tree, you'll die. And the snake then is able to go up and touches the tree and says, look, you won't die. Which then convinces Eve that not only is she able to then touch the tree, that she would also be able to eat of it. And so sometimes when you see that sort of initial idea that then proves to be untrue, that everything else comes with it. It's the way that, you can imagine that, one person, perhaps, realizing that something wasn't always the case or that something was new, then will really leave an entire tradition behind. But until that happens, that there is that very strict boundary. The alternative is having something that is perhaps, overall a stronger boundary, but one that is able to be flexible. One that's willing to have exceptions when the time calls for it, but knowing that it will reach back to the original equilibrium. And so even as the Torah here is emphasizing this very hard and perhaps brittle boundary, because, as we'll see, Judaism has always borrowed from its other cultures, and actually within conservative Judaism, being able to study the history of Canaanite religion has really opened up a lot of deeper understanding of what's happening within the Bible. That it was able to then create, I think, that stronger yet more flexible boundary. And of course, as we see Judaism develop in different places, that it often productively borrowed from the culture around it. And this continues where we're able to continue to create new music for our services, matching the sort of music of the time, that's able to make it more meaningful. And so I think then as we ask then, how are we able to then maintain that strong sense of identity, even as perhaps that boundary may be a little more flexible? I think it's able to come from two places. The first is coming from that intellectual perspective. That Judaism, especially as it developed in the hands of the rabbis, was open to looking at things from multiple points of view, while still, being able to kind of treat that as an intellectual discussion, but to then always sort of come back to core values that directed people's actions. And so it meant that you're able to sort of let some thoughts into your head. You're able to consider it from a different perspective without necessarily needing to agree. This is something that I know is difficult for some people, but I think the more that we're able to do that, the more we're better able to really face the challenges in the world around us. Of course, the other side is one that's going to be coming from the heart. That sometimes when there's such a strong emotional attachment, that it really then colors everything you see. So that even as you're able to sort of be in other places, that there will be that feeling of discomfort. And that it's only when you're able to then sort of return to the ideas or the space or the community that you're then able to feel right and whole. And so I think some of the fissures that we have in society is the fact that many people are able to have these strong identities and, in WAPs right now, trying to make them a little too strict. That is the difference of then how are we able to create that strong identity? That for some people, where they're willing to have those intellectual conversations and curiosity about those different viewpoints, that's easier to do. While someone who's coming from the heart will really be scared, perhaps, at some of the ideas that are then discussed in that setting. And of course, someone who is only within the head loses out on the emotional response that can make it very hard to have certain conversations. And so as that is able to create fissures, I would push us then, as we then, at least as I would imagine that we may be struggling with this reading, to then reflect perhaps on how we're able to empathize with those whose instincts or initial attitude would be different. And that perhaps by putting ourselves into that perspective, whether it's by stretching our emotions, of perhaps doing more work to really sit with the kernels of feelings, whether it's good feelings or bad feelings, that it's easier to understand how certain ideas may be scary. And then for those of us who perhaps are coming at it from more of that emotional place, to be able to then imagine and at least have that openness to then see it in that more intellectual way, to at least expand our own understanding. And so I hope that each of us are able to then do so, and then really fulfill at least the command of this Torah portion, Re'eh, really meaning to see then what is set in front of us. And so with that, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. And as of course, I think one of the ongoing debates within the Jewish world is within the Israeli government of the correct way to end the war, to be able to bring the hostages home. That will continue with Achenu, a prayer that those who are still held in captivity may go from that place of deepest darkness to a place of light and freedom. We'll continue with Achenu. Achenu, Kol Beit Yisrael. Achenu, Kol Beit Yisrael. Hanetunim b'tzara ubashivya, ha'omdim ben baya uven baya basha. Hamakom yirachem alehem ve'yotzia b'tzara b'ivracha u'me'achel ale'ov mishibu v'geula hashta b'gala u'mizman. We'll continue with Misha Berach, our prayer for physical and spiritual healing. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu the source of strength, who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. This week in our Har'el community, we are remembering Percy Yankin, father of Carol Epstein, Frida Miller, grandmother of Ellen Durnley, Leon Alexander, father of Fran Alexander, Michael Katzin, brother of Myrna Epstein, Peter Niemitz, father of Mary Ann Siegel, Avril Novick, sister of Stephen Kay, Ephraim Milstein, father of Mo Milstein, and Hilda Cohen, mother of Richard Cohen, Thor Gershman, father of Mats Gershman, and Moses Holloway, father of Brahms Holloway. We pray that their memory may be for a blessing. We'll continue evoking the end of Mourner's Kaddish by singing Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom ben Ramav, Yaseh Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael ve'imeru Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ve'imeru Amen. So Shabbat Shalom. Thank you everyone who's watching tonight. Our services tomorrow will be at 10 a.m. and this week we're celebrating the Bar Mitzvah of Joshua Hockhauser. And so the Kiddush is sponsored by the Hockhauser family in celebration. And so on Sunday at 2 p.m. Will be the rallies at the Art Gallery as a call to release the hostages will continue. And then on September 2nd at 1 p.m. There'll be a march along with a few other communities. And then I guess, sorry, I'm just trying to think what I want to highlight. Today Avital and I were talking about that our announcements are getting longer. So as I wrote about this week and coming to September, a lot of our programs are starting up again. And so it means that really things are incredibly busy. If I just listed everything, it would be way too much. But I think the most important things to highlight is that we are starting again Kabbalat Shabbat and dinner once a month. So our dinner for September will be September 20th at 6 p.m. So be sure to register so that we can prepare correctly. And then also, I think that's most important. Well, I guess no, the seniors lunch is Wednesday, September 11th, and the registration for that will close September 4th. And something that also started on the calendar this week, the next Har El Hikers is going to be up to Mosquito Creek. So that'll be Sunday, September 22nd at 2 p.m. And, we have all the events on the website. We have them on posters in the lobby of the building and, of course, in Harel this week. So we won't bore you every week with the long list of announcements. So we'll finish our service with Vishamru, followed by Hamotzi. Vishamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbat V'asod et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam be'rit olam Beini u'bein Yisrael Oti le'olam Oti le'olam Oti le'olam Vishamru b'nei Yisrael Shabbat V'asod et ha-Shabbat L'dorotam be'rit olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat v'asod et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam be'rit olam Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat v'yinafash Shabbat v'yinafash Shabbat v'yinafash V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat v'asod et ha-Shabbat l'dorotam be'rit olam Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. So I'll step in the kitchen to wash my hands. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Wonderful. So Shabbat